No problem. Parshas Yisro.
Interesting parsha.
Yeah, it's very exciting. This is the week we read about the Torah being given, how the Torah was given. But before that, I would like to talk about Yisro himself, just for a few moments. So Yisro was Moshe's father-in-law from Midian, obviously not Jewish, not part of the Jewish people. And the parsha itself starts on page 394. You got Mitsuda, I have no idea what it starts on. But Yisro was the father-in-law of Moshe. And after all of the miracles happened with the Jewish people, them leaving Egypt, the 10 plagues, splitting of the sea, they beat Amalek, destroyed Amalek. Yisro was so impressed that he came to join the Jewish people. Right? There are certain people that they see something and they react. They see a positive spiritual thing and they react positively and they want to do something about it. That was Yisro. Now, if we look how others reacted, Amalek, look at Amalek. What did they do when the Jewish people left Egypt? The splitting of the sea. God clearly punished the enemies of the Jewish people with the 10 plagues and killing of the firstborn and all of the other plagues. What did they do? They tried to kill every Jew and focused on the elderly and the sick. That was their reaction because Amalek wanted to fight with God. That was their whole reason for existence. They wanted to fight with Hashem, and you can't fight with Hashem, so they fought with Hashem's people, which was the Jewish people. So you see how two different groups, two different people can see the same event and how they can react differently. Now, but there was a story in Europe. It was the time the Chofetz Chaim was still alive, so we're probably talking in the 1910s, 1920s. I might have mentioned this story before. There was a dibuk, right? You've heard of a dibuk?
Yes.
So they were a real thing. There are certain spiritual forces, negative spiritual forces, and there was a person who had a dibuk, was possessed by a real evil spiritual force, and the Chofetz Chaim was able to get this dibuk miraculously away from this person, and it was apparently everybody who was there. It was like a supernatural experience. Like all I have to compare it to is the movie The Exorcist, but obviously it probably wasn't exactly like that. But you can imagine witnessing something like this, and somebody asked someone who was there, the whole town must have just become super religious overnight. Like they must have been so, it must have been so impactful, this spiritual experience, having a dibuk and the Chofetz Chaim doing an exorcism. Right? When was the last time that happened? Everyone must have become super devout, and the person said, "No, not at all." People said, "Oh, that's nice," and just went about their daily lives. And that's what happens, unfortunately, right? You see the Jewish people, the most miraculous thing to happen in human history. The Jewish people leave Egypt with all of these miracles, and Amalek, how do they react? They want to destroy the Jews. They want to kill all the Jews. But Yisro reacted properly. He saw these miraculous things, and he wanted to come and learn from the Jewish people and be part of the Jewish people. Now, also, we have, you see this similar concept in Parshas Naso, which we're not going to get up to for a while, in Bamidbar. Right? You have the two parts of the Torah which seemingly have nothing to do with each other, but are right next to each other. Right? You might have mentioned this. The first you have Sota, right? And then you have Nazir. Sota is a woman who is accused of committing adultery under certain parameters. She's brought into the temple, and the Kohen feeds her a certain drink, where the name of God is erased into the drink, and if she actually committed adultery, she dies, and the man that she committed adultery with also dies. If she is not guilty, then she survives, and her husband's not allowed to ever divorce her again. So that's the first parsha. And then after that, we have the Nazir. The Nazir is somebody who takes upon himself extra restrictions to not cut his hair, to not drink wine or any grape products, and to not come in contact with the dead. So in addition to all the mitzvahs we're already keeping as Jews, he takes upon himself those extra commandments. Now, what is the connection, Rashi asks, what's the connection between Sota, this woman who is accused of adultery, and Nazir? So it says that anybody who sees the Sota procedure should become a Nazir. That anyone who was in the temple and saw this, which was really a miraculous procedure, right? If this woman committed a sin, she dies right away, right? Imagine you see somebody commit a sin and a lightning bolt will come down and strike them. That would be a miracle, right? I was just telling Rachel earlier that there was this anti-Semite who has this had this Facebook page called Rise Up Ocean County.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So his page was taken down and now he's in prison. Prison for bank fraud. So
that part I didn't see, but.
So you can't say this is the same thing at all, but it's nice to see when Hashem punishes those who, try to hurt His people.
But I also learned that you're not supposed to rejoice.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be joyous, but you're supposed to you recognize the justice of Hashem,
Yeah, that,
right?
yeah.
Not supposed to be joyous. I'm sorry if I sounded too joyous,
No.
but
You don't always see the justice
We can't have a soul
because
Right.
things have to evolve before you see
Right.
the justice sometimes, unfortunately. But what are you gonna
right. So
do?
this I was very taken aback by this, that this person who did so much, or was doing so much evil to Jewish people, lying about Jewish people, got punished right away. Now imagine,
It wasn't right away. It was
No,
I'm
it
saying
evolved.
pretty close. I'm saying it wasn't like but imagine that in the temple somebody committed this sin of adultery, and she drinks this liquid, and she dies right away because of it. That would be a miraculous thing. So, and her the person she committed adultery with, he also dies, and he doesn't even have to be there. Just randomly drops dead. So it's a miraculous procedure. So the Torah says, if you see that sota procedure, you become a Nazir. Why? A Nazir is someone who becomes holier. He takes upon himself extra restrictions to elevate himself to live a more pious life. The idea is that anytime we see something inspiring, we get in touch with spirituality, with Hashem, we have to do something practical to take the next step, to take it with us, so that that spirituality lives on.
even
So-
for the women though. I mean, like if there are women there.
Oh, did the woman become a Nazir?
Yeah,
Not aware.
right.
I'm not aware.
I think it's like for the men only.
That's what I thought.
It says Kol Haroa
I thought
Sota
it was this whole
Bilkul.
very select group of men that, in some ways, from my interpretation, maybe I'm wrong, isolated themselves from everybody else because of the way they were aspiring to this higher level.
Right.
Like I think they didn't even use like certain of the things that you could use on Shabbat to observe Shabbat. It was like
I know.
they were in caves in the dark or something.
Caves
some
in
of
the
them
dark?
at one
No,
point
no,
in
no,
time.
I'm not sure.
That's the Nicolaites. No,
No,
no.
that
but-
was exciting.
But
the
the
Catholics are a different sect of. I don't even know if they're Jews, but
no, they're Jews.
they're
Yeah.
Jews.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
but they're Carlites.
I believe a woman could become a Nazir, but if it's talking specifically that a woman who sees it should become a Nazir after the Sota, that I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Wondering.
But that was a good question, good point. Have to check into that.
Research.
All right, there you go. Let me know if you find anything. But the idea is that if you see something inspiring, you have to do something practically to take it with you. Sometimes even if we see something inspiring and we don't do anything about it, we're actually worse off because we become numb to those inspirational things. So, right, if you go to a shul and you hear a lecture, like you just heard the soldier, you're inspired. So you have to do something practical in your life to take that inspiration with you. You go to shul and you're inspired on Shabbos from the davening or from the rabbi's speech. You have to, you have to do something. Say, oh, now I'm going to learn a little more Torah to take it with me. And that's what Yisro did. Yisro saw this most inspirational thing of all time, and he said, I have to do something about this. I have to act, and I have to become part of the Jewish people. And you compare Yisro to Amalek, right? Yisro said, I'm going to take this with me, and I'm going to become, more spiritual. And Amalek said, I'm going to try to kill the Jews, and that did not work out well for them. Okay, so that was just about Yisro. Now, let's talk about the giving of the Torah. We're good? Good on time? Yeah, fine. Okay, so every religion has a revelation story, meaning they're claiming we're a religion and we have something unique to offer you. They're saying that God or some higher spiritual power gave a message to mankind and we have the truth. And nobody else has the truth. So if we read the Torah's, what we call revelation narrative, we're going to see that it's unique versus all other religions. And not only that, but the Torah even challenges us and says, see if anything like this has ever happened before, which I always find very powerful. Let's just read it. I find it, we always talk about it, but to actually read the psukim inside I think is very impactful. So if we're on page 406, I'll start there.
What's the verse?
Oh, right, Matsuda. 9, let's start from, 404, let's start 404. We still don't know the verse. Verse is Tazayin, so it's a good test, Tazayin, 1916.
Thank you.
So now, again, all the Jewish people are gathered around Mount Sinai, in the Sinai desert, and they're preparing to receive the Torah. God tells them they have to separate from their wives for 3 days. The men have to separate from their wives so that they are in a state of purity. And other preparations they have to do, right? You just don't run in to get the Torah. It has to have preparations. But let's start with verse 16. Vahiva yom hashlishi biyos haboker vayikolu subrakim va'anan kavid al ahar v'kol shofar chazak ma'od. It was the third day, after the third day of preparations, in the morning, and there were sounds and thunder and a thick cloud over the mountain, and the sound of the shofar was very great. It says that usually when a shofar, when you start blowing a shofar, it starts out very strong and it gets weaker and weaker. This shofar was getting stronger and stronger as it was going. So you have thunder, lightning, a thick cloud, the shofar, vayechrad kol ha'am asher b'machana, and the people were very afraid. Vayotze Moshe es ha'am likros ha'elokim min ha'machana, and Moshe went out to greet God from the machana, v'siyatzu b'tachta sahar, and they gathered at the foot of the mountain. So Rashi points out this literally means that they were at the foot of Mount Sinai, ready to receive the Torah, but also there's a drasha that Hashem took the mountain over their heads and said, it says, Har Kegigas, he made it like a barrel, and he said, if you accept the Torah, great, and if you don't accept the Torah, you're going to die here. So it seems like the Jewish people were forced to accept the Torah. However, we know that the Jewish people also said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do when we hear. When God went around to all the nations of the world, they said they didn't want the Torah. When he came to the Jewish people, they said, we will do and we will hear. So how does that work with this that says God threatened them and said, you have to accept the Torah, and if you don't, here will be your burial place. So if we get to that at the end, we could discuss it. But there's a lot of lessons and answers given to that question. But let's continue with the verses for now. V'har Sinai arshin kulo, and the mountain was smoking. Mipnei asher yarad alav Hashem ba'esh, because God came down in fire. V'yal ashanu ke'eshen hakivshon. V'yachred kol ha'har me'od, and it was like the mountain was shaking. It was like the smoke of a furnace, and the mountain was shaking. Right? Obviously, Hashem is not fire. Hashem is not physical. All of these things are, what's the word? Anthropomorphisms, I think is the word, when we use physical terms to talk about God, but obviously God is not fire. Vayikol shofar holich v'chazik ma'od, the shofar was getting stronger. Moshe yedaber v'elokim yanenu v'kol, Moshe spoke and God answered in a loud voice. So we have all the people and on the bottom of the mountain, thunder, lightning, they're all afraid, the mountain's trembling. Vayevid Hashem al Har Sinai, Hashem descends upon Mount Sinai, El Rosh Har, the beginning of the mountain, the head of the mountain. Vayikra Hashem leMoshe el Rosh Har vayal Moshe. And Hashem called out to Moshe, and Moshe went up the mountain. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Reid ha'ed ba'am pen yehusu el Hashem liros v'nafum mimenu rav. You have to go warn the people that they shouldn't touch the mountain, they shouldn't come close to the mountain, lest many of the people fall. There was a special commandment for the time that the Jewish people were allowed, they're supposed to be at the bottom of the mountain, but they weren't actually allowed to touch the mountain. V'gama kohanim hanigashim el Hashem yiskadashu, and even the kohanim that became or sanctified to Hashem, also they're not allowed to touch. Pen yifrotz behem Hashem, lest they burst forth. Art Scroll says, translates parrots. Vayomer Moshe el Hashem. Moshe said to Hashem, Lo yuchal ha'am lalos el har, the people aren't allowed to go up to the mountain, al Har Sinai, ki ata hevidasa banu lemor hagbel es har v'kidashto, because he told us to stay around the mountain and you sanctified it. Vayomer elav Hashem, lech reid, va'alisa ata ve'aron imach. Hashem said to Moshe, go down and you should come up with Aaron. So Aaron and Moshe are going to go up the mountain. V'kohanim va'am al yersu la'alos el Hashem pen yifrotz bam. And the Kohanim, the priests, and the people aren't allowed to go up. So it's Moshe and Aaron going up. Vayerin Moshe ala'am, vayomer alayim. And Moshe went down to the people and he said to them, Vayidaber Elokim es kol advarim ha'el aleimor. And Hashem spoke all of these words saying, so God himself is speaking, Hanaichi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzei sicha me'eretz Mitzrayim me'beis avadim. I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt, the house of bondage. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. You should not have other gods before me. Don't make any images. Don't make any images which are of anything in the heavens or on the earth, or in the seas. Okay, and it goes on. This obviously is the 10 Commandments. I just showed the first two, I believe. It was first 3. So. Right, and then we have the end of the 10 Commandments. So if you notice here, what's interesting is obvious, just from reading the Torah itself, that the entire people experienced this together. The entire Jewish people experienced the giving of the Torah at the same time. That they're here in front of Mount Sinai, there's thunder, there's lightning, there's a great cloud. They can feel Hashem's presence descending on the mountain, and God himself speaks to them and says, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. You shouldn't make it. Right? Mm-hmm. That's something which has never been repeated in human history. And how do I know that? Because the verse says it. If we go to page 964
In the volume.
in Dvarim. Ooh, we don't have Dvarim. You want to hear it? Here's an art scroll chumash if you want. See, I fooled you.
What was it?
964. There's a recap of the giving of the Torah. Let's see if I wrote down the right pasuk. 432. So if we go verse 32, so Lamed Beis. Kishalna liyamim rishayim asher hayu lefanecha lemin hayom asher bara Elokim adam ala aretz lemiktzei hashemayim vad ktzei hashemayim. If they'll ask you, if your children will ask you about days of the early days, from the day that God created the world, from this side of the heavens to the other until the end of the heavens, Haniya kadavar hagadol hazeh or anishma kamo, has anything as great as this happened or been heard? Hashama am kol Elokim medaber metoch ha'esh, that an entire people, that a people has heard God speak from the midst of the fire, kasher shamata avayechi, that you saw and lived. O hinase Elokim lavo lakachas logoy mekarv goy b'masas ba'osus movsim b'milchama v'yad chazak v'zron atuya, or that God has taken a nation out from another with wondrous signs and through war and with his strong hand and outstretched arm, v'morim gedolim, and wonderful wonders, I guess. Like everything that's been done to you, Hashem Elokeichem b'Mitzrayim le'einecha, to your eyes. The Torah itself is saying, if people will ask you, your children will ask you about what happened in the days long ago, say, has there ever been in human history anyone even claiming that God took an entire nation from another nation and performing miracles with them? And not only that, but that God actually spoke to the entire people together and revealed himself in a national revelation. The Torah itself is challenging us to say, has this ever happened? Now that's quite a bold statement to make if you're not confident that it's true. And obviously the Torah is the word of Hashem, so it is true. So Hashem is obviously quote unquote confident. But we don't need to right, never mind. So again, I would like to, there's a famous Kuzari that I've always heard about this aspect of the giving of the Torah, the fact that it was given in front of the entire people. But for the first time, I actually looked it up, and it's fascinating. So the Kuzari, I'm sure you're familiar, was a nation in Central Asia, and the king of they're called the Khazars. The king of the Khazars invited representatives from Islam, Christianity, and Judaism to tell him about the different religions, and he was looking for what religion he wanted to adopt. So the Kuzari records the conversation between the king and the rabbi, the philosophical discussions they were having. So in the first mimer, in number 80, he starts, and this is what the king says, how he assumes a religion starts. I'll just summarize it. He says that the way a religion starts is that there has to be a foundation, that a single person and a few people, they come up with an idea and they start preaching beliefs. A single person starts preaching beliefs and he gets some followers, and then slowly it grows and grows as they convince people to follow their religion. And please tell me how your religion started. That's what the king said. So the rabbi responded, that's only the way man-made religions start. But a religion that's from God starts instantly. He says, the Jewish people, the way the religion started was, God spoke to the entire people at once. It's only when a person is making his own religion that he comes up with his ideas, and he's got to convince his followers, and they convince their followers, and then very often what happens is they conquer another nation, and they're forced to take on the religious beliefs. And that's what happens. What's his name? Rabbi Lawrence Kellerman actually researched every major world religion and found that every world religion was started in this way, the way the king of the Khazars is describing, instead of Judaism. And the rabbi says, right, he writes, the Khazar king says, "Thou surprised me, O rabbi." I wonder if that's how they actually talked, or that's just how they translated it, back in the, wherever they translated this, like Shakespeare. Everyone spoke like Shakespeare, I don't know. But the rabbi says, it's not only that, there were 600,000 people in Egypt who witnessed all of these miracles, and they all came out together, they all witnessed the Torah together, and he says it wasn't just the giving of the Torah. He writes about the 10 plagues, each of the plagues, all the people witnessing together, and he goes on, and he says not only that, but if we think that when the Jewish people were for 40 years in the desert, we had manna coming from the sky. Now, that came every day except for Shabbos, the Kuzari writes, there was manna coming from the sky. That was a miracle. a miracle every day for 40 years witnessed by 600,000 people. You can't make something like that up.
Minimum.
What?
Minimum.
Oh, right, with the men, right. There are obviously more. And that's how he, and the Kuzari writes, the king actually writes that that's irrefutable. Once you have such a thing, it's irrefutable that happened. Right, and he continues. It's worth a read. You get it in English, but there definitely is that people. Okay. Oh, so I would like to also about this. What time is it? Ooh. I would like to read the Rambam. The Rambam says about Rambam Maimonides writes about the uniqueness of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. This I would like to read in the Hebrew and translate. So Moshe Rabbeinu lo heminu bo Yisrael mipnei ha'osa she'asa. The people did not believe in Moses because of the miracles that he did. Shehamaymen al pi ha'osos yesh belibo dofi she'efshar she'asa ha'os abel v'kishuf. They didn't believe in Moses because of the miracles he did. Maybe he used magic, right? There's such a thing. There are forces of impure forces in the world, magic and different things. You can manipulate the spiritual forces. Maybe that's how Moshe did it. Moshe did these miracles in the desert because they were needed, right? The sea had to be split because the Jewish people had to escape from the Egyptians. Lo lehevi raya al nevuah. He didn't do the miracles to prove the truth of his prophecy. That's what he says. The Jewish people need to escape from the Egyptians, so he split the sea. The Jewish people needed to eat in the desert, so the manna came down. They needed to drink, so he opened the rock, that water should come out. It's the Korach in this congregation. They rebelled, and the earth swallowed them up. All these miracles, and all the miracles. Why do we believe in Moshe? Why do we believe in the Torah? But Maimed Har Sinai, because of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. She'einenu ro'u, our eyes saw, v'lo zar, and nobody else. V'aznenu shamu, our ears heard, v'lo acher, nobody else. Ha'esh v'hakolos v'alapidim, we saw the thunder and the lightning and the fire. V'hu nagesh el arafel v'hakol medabrei love. And Hashem spoke, and the voice spoke. V'anu shomin Moshe. Leich emor lahem kach v'kach, and we heard God say to Moshe, "Go say to the people this and this." V'cheinu ha'omer panim b'panim davar Hashem imachem, and it said, "I'll speak to you face to face." V'namar lo asavosenu karas bris hazos, and said, "We didn't. Our forefathers didn't make this bris. Rather, we made this covenant with Hashem." So the fact, why do we believe, and he continues, why do we believe in Moshe, meaning in the Torah and the prophecy of Moshe? It's not because of the miracles that were done, but rather because we all stood together and witnessed with our own eyes. We don't have to trust anybody else. We saw it with our own eyes. All the wonders, the thunder and the lightning, and the fact that Hashem was speaking to us, and we don't have to rely on anybody else. It wasn't the miracles that he did, but rather the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai that we saw ourselves. Now, if so, what was the point of the miracles? Right. So the Rambam writes that the miracles were needed at the time, but also we need to also experience something. We had to experience going out of Egypt so that we could inculcate those messages in our hearts, because God could have told us that he's in charge of humanity and he punishes the evil and rewards the righteous. But it's much more impactful if you actually experience it. When we actually experience something, meaning going out of Egypt and seeing in front of our eyes the evil people getting punished, that is much more powerful than just being told about it. Okay, I would just like to conclude with something on the last of the 10 Commandments. Okay, I think we have, what time is it?
7:25.
7:25? Okay, so there's one more last commandment. So the last commandment is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's possessions. So the Beis Halevi asks a very simple question. How can God command us not to have a feeling? Right? Your friend has a new Mercedes, and you really wanted a Mercedes. So you covet your neighbor's Mercedes. You want it. Now, you're not going to go steal it necessarily, but how can God command me not to have that feeling of wanting my friend's Mercedes? So first he cites the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra says that a poor man, someone who is on, let's say, public assistance, and he doesn't have a house, he doesn't think that he's going to marry the princess, right? He understands that it's out of his league, and he doesn't feel that he doesn't feel any bad feelings that he can't marry the princess, because he understands it's like totally disconnected from him. So the Ibn Ezra says that's the way we should feel about our neighbor's possession. Just like this poor man views the princess, and he knows that he's never going to marry her, so too we should feel that our neighbor's possessions, our friend's possessions, are totally beyond reach, and therefore we won't, once we have that idea in our heads, we won't have that feeling of jealousy. That's what he quotes from the Ibn Ezra. The Beis Halevi says himself that imagine you have a tremendous Yetzer Hara. You have a Yetzer Hara. You want to do this sin so bad. So you're running to do the sin, and all you can think about is the sin. And it's February, so when you run, all of a sudden, you use some black ice, and you start slipping. He says, at that time when you start slipping, and you think your head's about to hit the pavement, you're going to crack your skull open, God forbid, you're not thinking about that sin anymore. You're afraid. You're just afraid that you're going to hurt yourself. And he says that little bit of fear takes away the desire to sin. So the Beis Halevi says if we work on having fear of Hashem and fear of sin, and even a little bit, that'll memela take away the desire of to sin, meaning the desire of our neighbor's possessions. If we work on ourselves to have that fear of God and to live with the fear of God and live with the fear of sin, just like that guy who's slipping on the ice and all of a sudden, doesn't have that desire to sin, we won't have that desire to have our neighbor's new Mercedes and our neighbor's possessions. I thought that was very... Don't tell anyone, because that's going to be my weekly dose of inspiration this week.
Don't you have it recorded?
What?
Don't you have it recorded?
That's true. Not so many people listen. Just joking.
Yeah,
All right.
share.
Yeah, no, it's all good. All right.